Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, July the 20th, 2021. We're glad you are here. I'll ask you at this time to check your mobile devices. Be sure that if you've got any of those, you can keep them on vibrate or silent so that we don't interrupt our meeting tonight. And when you come to the podium, please be sure to activate the microphone. Red light will come on the top to be let you know that it is working so that we can hear you and get a good recording of our meeting tonight. All of our commissioners are present, along with the clerk, county manager, and our attorney. And with that, we'll come to item 2, our invocation. We're glad to have Reverend Ed Stevenson with us tonight from Harney's Fairview United Methodist Church. And Brother Stevenson, come and lead us in our invocation. Let's stand together, and that'll be followed by our pledge to the flag.
Father, we come to you this wonderful evening, thanking you for the opportunity to come to you. Lord, we lift up this committee, this commission of people who serve so selflessly to this beautiful county. Father, I ask that tonight you give them a double dose of your grace, a big helping of your wisdom, and to those who make presentations here tonight, just that we all remember where we are and whose we are, and that differences of opinion are only differences of opinion. Father, we thank you for the opportunities. We thank you for this group. We thank you for this county especially, God's country for sure. But now, Lord, our plea and our prayer is that you will continue to watch over each and every one of us individually and corporately. And above all else, Lord, that you have your will in all of our lives. We make our plea, we offer our praise and our prayer in the name, the most beautiful name we know, that of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Please join us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 on our agenda tonight is approval of the agenda. Gentlemen, you've had this agenda for several days. I'll entertain a motion for its approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Maynard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That is all of us, Madam Clerk. Item 5, approval of meeting minutes. Tonight we have minutes from May the 18th, 2021. Our regular meeting from June the 1st, 2021, our pre-agenda meeting, and from June the 15th, 2021, our regular meeting. Gentlemen, you've had these for review. I'll entertain a motion for their approval.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed them. I found no discrepancy in the minutes, so I'll make the motion that approved as rendered.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That is all of us. Thank you, Madam. Item 6, presentations. We have a presentation tonight by our county manager, introduction of our new health director. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and privilege of introducing to you Mr. Danny Scalise II as our new health director. Rhonda is with him, and so is Susan, the chair of the board of health, if they want to approach and say anything, if it's all right, sir.
Absolutely. You guys come up and introduce our new director, and we would be glad to hear any comments you might have too.
Good evening. I'm Susan Bingham, Chair of the Burke County Health Board. I'm pleased to introduce our new director for the Burke County Health Department. As of July the 12th, he was sworn in into this position. I am sure he will have a great working relationship with you, the county commissioners, and my hope that his relationship will continue for many years to come as he looks out for the health and welfare of our county residents. It is my honor to present to you Danny Scalise, our new health director.
I just want to say thank you all very much for letting me come down here. I'm pleased. I've been a lifelong West Virginian until about 7 days ago. So I'm proud to be down here. And Brian, thank you to you and all your team. It's been very helpful in making me making my transition as easy as possible. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, and welcome, Danny. We're looking forward to working with you, and welcome to our county.
Thank you.
Item 7 tonight is scheduled public hearings. We have several public hearings tonight. First one coming from Community Development, Zoning Map Amendment ZMA 2021-02. And this will be presented tonight by Shane Frisbee, our interim planning director. Evening, Shane.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Shortly after the Board of Commissioners' June 15th regular meeting, the Community Development Department was made aware of an issue with the newly adopted county zoning ordinance. While the new county zoning ordinance was formally adopted at the meeting, it did not contain the recommended additions and changes from the planning board. Upon learning of the issue, the Community Development staff conducted a review of the adoption process and confirmed that all required procedures were followed and all legal benchmarks were met for the adoption of the zoning ordinance. The error occurred between the planning board meeting and the commissioners' meeting when the agenda packet was not updated with the recommended changes approved by the planning board. Ultimately, the board approved the earlier edition of the new county zoning ordinance as it was shown in the agenda packet. This does not affect the legality or enforceability of the newly enacted zoning ordinance, but it does mean that some of the language is out of sync with the intended changes and minor clerical updates. The Community Development Department did not update the agenda packet with the recommended changes approved by the planning board and accepts full responsibility for this mistake. The department consulted with the UNC School of Government on what could be done to rectify the situation. Staff was informed that because the planning board had already voted on the intended copy of the zoning ordinance, the Board of Commissioners could amend the county zoning ordinance to reflect what the planning board approved. The amendment may only contain the changes between the two documents. However, the amendment also includes a few proposed changes recommended by the county manager and clerk to clarify the language in the sections for the planning board and board of adjustments. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Shane. Gentlemen, let me call your attention. The first item that I called was a different amendment, item number, and Shane has started this off on item number 3, which is quite okay. But I just want you to know, for the record, Madam Clerk, we are discussing Community Development Zoning Text Amendment ZTA 2021-02. And that number seems eerily the same, but
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I had my documents out of order, but it is correct on the meeting agenda. I am incorrect with the order of the documents that I had in front of me. So my sincerest apologies for that mistake.
that's quite all right, Shane. But Madam Clerk, is the number correct on item 1 and 3?
One is a map amendment and one is a text amendment.
I see,
So-
thank you very much. Okay, yes, ZMA, yes, okay. So we are working on the ZTA 2021-02, a zoning text amendment. Okay, gentlemen, you've heard this information, you've had it in your package. Any questions for Shane on this item? Seeing here none, I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask if there is anyone here tonight to speak to this item. Seeing here none, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, please come forward. Come to the podium and state your name, please, and address for the record.
We're not ZTA, so I misread. I had it out of order, so I started reading this one for the text amendment. This doesn't have to do with
Cancel that.
Okay. Okay, very good. Anyone else? Any concern? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. You've heard this information. I will close the public hearing and,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, ma'am.
if I could just make you aware that I did update the ordinance to reflect that staff did add some changes to the text amendment as Shane reported, so we are both in agreement. You have a copy of that at your seat.
Right, gentlemen, you do have that copy at your seat if you'd like to refer to it. The ZTA 2021-02, an ordinance amending the official Burke County zoning ordinance. All right. Now that we've got all that settled, any questions from anybody? Seeing here none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt ordinance 201-13 in reference to zoning text amendment ZTA 2021-02, and to adopt the following consistency statement. Zoning amendment ZTA 2021-02 is reasonable, conforms with the county's adopted comprehensive plan, and is in the public interest.
All right, thank you, Scott. Gentlemen, you've heard this motion by Commissioner Moe. All those in favor, please signify by the uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that is 5-0. All right, now we're going to move back to the real item number one, the zoning map amendment ZMA 2021-02 and public hearing. We on the same page now, Shane?
We are, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. This will be presented by Shane Frisbee. Okay.
In 2005, the Venture Capital LLC firm petitioned Burke County to rezone approximately 243 acres of land off of NC Highway 126 and Gwaltney Road in the Linville Township into a parallel conditional planned mixed-use district, or PRMUCD. The petition also included a master development plan for 5 phases of development. The rezoning and the development plan was approved with conditions by the Burke County Planning Board on October 27, 2005, and by the Board of Commissioners on November 1, 2005. The final plat for Phase 1 of the subdivision was approved by the Planning Board in October of 2006. Development of Phase 1 took place between 2007 and 2008. The American economy went into a deep recession in late 2007 to early 2008, which for the most part remained in Burke County until late 2011 to 2012. Such sales of lots within Phase 1 of the Hawksbill subdivision were and have remained stagnant with few exceptions. Venture Capital has sold off some of the land which is originally platted as future phases of the Hawksbill subdivision. Venture Capital and another majority landholder of the remaining future phase of the Hawksbill properties holding High Country Lumber and Mulch now wish to sell off these parcels. Because these parcels are being sold to separate individuals and companies not related to the Hawksbill subdivision, Venture Capital, High Country Lumber, and Morganton Federal Savings are petitioning the county to rezone those parcels from the planned residential mixed-use parallel conditional district, or PRMUCD, and remove the approved zoning standards and conditions under the original ZMA 2005-06 rezoning as stated within Section 9A13 of the zoning ordinance. The petitioners are requesting to rezone the majority of the parcels to R1 district, with the exception of 3. 2 parcels are proposed to be rezoned to general business, and 1 is proposed to be rezoned to PRMU. These rezonings for PRMU and general business are in keeping with our long-range plan. They are not a spot zone because they conform with the long-range plan's intention to have an economic node at the Three-Way Supplies Lake James Fire Department area. And the PRMU parcel was previously a PRMU parcel before it was part of the Hawksbill subdivision and plan. It is keeping with the general characteristics of the area and the intent of the long-range plan. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Shane. Gentlemen, you've heard this information. And before I open the public hearing, any questions for Shane on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions, I believe 3. Basically, they're coming from an experience that this board dealt with in probably early teens. But anyhow, the question, Shane, are these, how many parcels have been sold under the old zoning?
I do not have that number in front of me, Commissioner Taylor.
A little bit of an explanation, Wayne, I don't know if you remember this or not, but we had a development off the Road Hess Airport Road that started a development, and I don't know, it was, I think, 40-some houses, 40-some lots. And they sold about half of them, could not sell the rest. So, and the zoning on that property was no mobile homes, and had to be brick homes, and they had to have a minimum, I think, of 1,200 square foot, if I'm recalling that correctly. Anyhow, it created a big problem. A lot of people who had built nice houses, obviously, they devalued the property of that house, and that's the reason for these couple of questions. Just don't be caught in that situation again, if you get my drift. If they purchased under the present zoning ordinance, how does the rezoning ordinance impact their property and the value of that property?
Commissioner Taylor, are you referring to the newly adopted Burke County zoning ordinance and how that
Yes.
affects it?
Yeah, you've got two things here that you're changing zoning zone. You really got three, but the ones I was questioning was 1 and 2.
Projects with a vested right prior to the adoption of the new ordinance would have the option of choosing which ordinance to follow. Projects that do not currently have a vested right or have not been developed would be under the guidance of the new zoning ordinance and document.
You had to say that last sentence again.
The new projects moving forward would fall under the newly adopted county zoning ordinance. The option to decide which zoning ordinance you fall under only pertains to projects that have a vested right prior to its adoption.
Was any of the owners of that property at your public hearing?
I don't believe that we had anybody at the public hearing for, or the pre-agenda meeting for the board. Trying to think. Jennifer, would you be able to answer how many homeowners showed up at the meeting?
We did have 2 owners, and we had several who called, asked questions, and made their decision that way. Also, it's probably important to note that I don't have the numbers either of how many lots have been sold, but the majority of the subdivision is still under the ownership of the developer.
Was a representative of Venture Capital at your hearing?
He was?
He's in agreement with this?
Yes, sir. He's the one who initiated the rezoning. And he wanted to be here this evening, but he couldn't. He's in some type of meeting, but he left his number in case you wanted to call him.
So at your public hearing, you had no one who was in disagreement with the
No, sir.
change?
No, sir. We didn't have anyone who was against the rezoning at the public hearing.
Okay. And we won't be affecting negatively anybody's value of the property by making this rezoning?
No, it's actually going to, most of it's going to R1, which, if you want, single-family home, single-family residence, that's really the best zoning district to be in. And then you've got the few commercial, lots that are gonna remain for future.
Well, thank you very much. Just trying to make sure we don't offend anybody or make them lose money by paying higher prices back then and it's worth less today. Thank you. You answered the question, Jeff.
Other questions? Thank you, Shane. Jennifer? All right, at this time, I will open the public hearing on this item. Do we have anybody here to speak to this item tonight? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Christian Hall. I own the 49 acres that adjoins that proposed commercial use, which backs up to, is that south of the blue line?
You're on the end, correct?
We own this section here, so it adjoins that parcel. At the moment, I'm opposed to the rezoning of commercial use. I don't really understand that if there's a specific use for that commercial. If there is a specific use, I'd like to hear what they're proposing to do with that, going that direction. Without having a specific direction, I'm kind of opposed because I feel like it would drop our land value. That was an area that we're going to build a home in. We have not built a home at this point, but that's proposed for us. And if they do go commercial, is there some sort of covenant that would restrict them as far as having wood siding and that would go into conform with what's around the lake? That would be something important to us. If it did go commercial, that we just didn't have a strip mall come in and it's all pavement and all of a sudden there's a Walmart. So that's something I'm, have a question towards the board or future use. Is that included in that part of that rezoning? Landscaping also, so if that's part of that covenant, is that part, does that make sense? I apologize, I'm not a public speaker, but you know, that would be something I'm concerned about. If I am gonna have commercial use right next to my home, is it a Walmart or is it, you know, something that conforms to our lake life and what's around Lake James?
All right, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Hall. I'll make a poor attempt to answer that, and then I'll ask staff to really answer the question. Typically, when we see rezoning requests, we don't know what's going to be the ultimate use of that property. But when that time comes, they have to go through the proper vetting process. And so Jennifer or Shane, would one of you guys address that for Mr. Hall, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Hall, and you are correct, Mr. Chairman. The general zoning districts would allow for the general categories as defined by our zoning ordinance, but the zoning ordinance does include aesthetic aspects. It includes, we've changed some of the commercial and industrial rules that were formerly just in the I-40 overlay, but now apply countywide. So we've increased some of the requirements that businesses would have to make sure that how their parking is addressed, some of the landscaping, aesthetics, those kind of things would be covered. Is this property in the lake overlay, Jennifer? If you could help answer that question, please.
It's also probably important to note that the area that's general business was proposed general business with the plan of Hawksville. So that's not new. And as far as thoughts about what could be there, I know that, I want to say State Employees Credit Union had plans of putting ATM there, but no plans for the rest of the general businesses there.
All right, thank you.
I don't think so. I think across the street it is.
I wasn't sure.
All right, Mr. Hall, do you have another question?
Looking at the map, the proposed general business is within the gates of that community. So that's something I'm concerned about also. So it's actually within, you know, where homes would be, there on the left-hand side. Maybe a proposed buffer zone between the homes and commercial, if it does go that direction, might be adequate.
Right, and that is one of the things that would be dealt with during that next process.
So, and again, concerned about property value in that area of having commercial go in, or maybe revisiting this as once there's something more specific what's going in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That will happen.
Thank you, Board.
Anyone else speak to this item?
Mr. Chairman, I have an email of opposition from Scott and Susan Carpenter. You want me to read that? Or just include it in the record?
I think including in the record, Mr. Attorney, is that suitable, or shall we read that?
In the record is fine. You're welcome to read it, but it's not necessary.
This item email, I think, came to all of us, did it not? So everybody should have had an opportunity to see those comments. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, point of order there. Since it is a public hearing, all voices are supposed to be heard. I believe it does need to be read.
Got an opinion on that, Mr. Attorney?
It's the board's decision, but it's been submitted. It will be public in the minutes, and that's all that's required for written comments.
I'll take requests from a board member. If you'd like it read, I'd be glad to have it read.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we do read it.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read that.
Certainly. Dear Commissioners, we just received notice that ZMA 2021-02 request has been changed from what was originally requested. We are opposed to two new provisions, rezoning a 30.56 parcel to general business. There is no demand for commercial uses in this area. There was no notification by applicant or notice provided to rezone this large tract to commercial. Morganton will not allow sewer access to this location. The tract should be R1 residential. We oppose rezoning 9.15 acre tract to PRMU. This is not what was requested or notification sent out on. This is a spot zone. PRMU must be associated with an approved master plan. This tract must be rezoned to R1. Planning board and staff should know better than to send these two requests forward to the commissioners. Also, where is the open space required in Hawksbill subdivision as part of the PRMU original approval? Scott and Susan Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Gentlemen, you've heard those comments, and I think staff has already answered a number of those in our information as well. Any other concerns, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I want to doubly sure Shane, this is a mixed zoning of business and or residential, correct?
Yes, sir. PRMU is a planned residential mixed use, so it would provide for some opportunities in a residential capacity and some in a commercial capacity, but not to the extent of specific districts. A good example of how that's used on this road, just up the road on 126, there is another parcel that is zoned PRMU, and somebody has elected to put a boat storage facility in. So that's an example of how that could be used as a PRMU zoned lot.
So if you get a lot of opposition, if I said I wanted to put a service station, convenience store there, and you got a lot of opposition, odds are you would not approve it, is that correct?
I'm not sure that that would be allowed in a PRMU district specifically, so that would not be an option there. General business would go through the site plan process as would any.
So it wouldn't be allowed anyhow? Possibly.
Not on PRMU, no.
Yeah, okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have.
All right. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. And gentlemen, if there are no further questions, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take the advice of your zoning committee and make the motion to order for number 2021-15, amending the Burke County zoning map as it relates to ZMA 2021-02, and approve the following statement of consistency rationale to comply with GS 160D and to blend the subject parcels into compatible zoning districts within the surrounding area. Statement of consistency. The proposed rezonings are consistent with the current land use plan because they will allow additional commercial land uses within the economic focus area of Lake James Planin area, and continue the single-family residential land use pattern which is outside of that focus area.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Gentlemen, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by the uplifted hand. I'm sorry, come again. Those opposed? That's 4-1, Madam Clerk. All right, thank you, Shane. Item number 2, Community Development Zoning Map Amendment ZMA 2021-03 in public hearing, again presented by Shane Prisby. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Staff has received a rezoning application from Tyler Campbell to rezone a 1.23 portion of one parcel of land totaling 9.86 acres. The request is to rezone the property from its current zoning of residential 2 or R2 to the general business GB zoning district. The applicant is requesting the rezoning in order to establish a commercial use on the front of the property. The applicant has a tree service business. The parcel has approximately 217 linear feet of frontage on NC 18 US 64. This road is a state-maintained US road and is not located within any overlay district. There's a mixture of county and municipal zonings in this area. It is identified as a secondary growth area. The subject parcel borders the city of Morganton's extraterritorial jurisdiction to the south. And there are several existing businesses in the area. So this parcel would not be out of line with the economic activities within that area or the general characteristic. The planning board voted to approve this, and it is being presented to the board for consideration. And the planning board vote was 6-0.
All right, thank you, Shane. Gentlemen, you've heard this information. Just before I open the public hearing, any questions for Shane on this item? Seeing, hearing none, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Do we have anybody here tonight to speak to this item? Seeing, hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2021-14 regarding ZMA 2021-03 and the following statement of consistency and a rationale for a decision. The rationale being the county land use plan recognizes the potential for additional commercial rezoning applications along the corridor in the future. Rezoning the 1.2 acre portion of the parcel fronting on NC 18 US 64 to the general business zoning district would not change the overall character of the area. The statement of consistency being that the Burke County Board of Commissioners approval of the proposed rezoning request because the proposed zoning reclassification is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the adopted land use plan and other plans for the physical development of the county as adopted by the Board of Commissioners, as well as the proposed zoning reclassification is compatible with the overall character of existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. Gentlemen, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by the uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that's 5-0. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And staff and others. Item 8 on our agenda tonight is informal public comments. At this time, we'll hear public comments, and I'll ask those to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone to speak tonight?
We do, Mr. Chairman. I would call Gwen Veazey. Is Gwen here? There she is.
Good evening. I'm Gwen Veazey, and I live at 103 La Bellevue Street in Morganton. My husband and I are natives of North Carolina, and we have lived in Burke County since 1978. I'm adding my voice to those who would like to see the Confederate Memorial removed from public county property. my great-grandfather, William G. Dillingham, fought for the Confederacy. In January of 1862, he enlisted in Company C, 60th Regiment, NC State Troops, and was injured in the hip in the First Murfreesboro Battle. So I know about heritage. And though that's part of my family history, I believe that we can show respect for dead Confederate soldiers without glorifying their cause, without showing public government support for their cause. They fought to continue enslaving a race of human beings. Or if you prefer to think of it another way, they fought for states' rights to enslave a race of human beings. The memorial represents that wrong cause and has represented white supremacy from the time erected to now. I'm told the monument was established in 1911 and the Confederate statue atop it placed in 1918. And you know, driving from Hickory on I-40 as you enter Burke County, you pass a sign that says, "Entering Burke County, all about advancement." And then about 100 yards further down the highway flies one of the huge Confederate battle flags displayed in our county. And maybe you can't do anything about that because it's on private property. But then when you get to Morganton, in downtown Morganton, right in the middle of town, is the Confederate statue towering over the public square. And I really feel that if our county is sincere about advancing, then it is time, and we should move the monument off public property to a museum or a cemetery. And I will be contacting our state representatives to let them know my feelings as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Beasley. Madam Clerk?
Dr. Kevin Frederick.
County Commissioners and staff, it is an honor to be here this evening to address you. My name is Kevin Frederick, and I have been a Presbyterian pastor for more than 35 years, including 13 years at the Waldensian Presbyterian Church in Valdez. I worked for racial harmony throughout my life. My father, who was a Presbyterian minister, began working in 1966 to integrate his white congregation of 250 members with a black congregation of 40 members in Johnson City, Tennessee. That merger actually occurred in 1967. More recently, when the Charlottesville, Virginia incident occurred in August of 2017, with the torches lining the night and the death and violence the next day, something inside me changed, and I felt called to step up. In the following weeks, I approached Dr. Michael Helmick, president of Western Piedmont Community College at the time, to plan an educational forum in which would promote a community dialogue regarding racial issues in our community. Together with Dr. Leslie McKeeson, we began planning the Symbols of the South Symposium in January and February of last year. The forum included an historian from UNC Charlotte and a sociologist from Appalachian State University. During both nights, we had crowds in excess of 200 people. We examined the historical factors and events that led to the erection of hundreds of Confederate monuments across the South. The United Daughters of the Confederacy were organized a generation after the Civil War and worked to redefine history around defending the lost cause of the Confederacy and specifically to preserve the supremacy of white Southerners. During the second session, we explored the meanings that have been ascribed to the Confederate battle flag over the years and how that symbol is interpreted by different groups today. Our third session involved numerous community leaders, including representatives from the Sons of the Confederacy and the NAACP, but it was canceled due to COVID. We can all agree that violence and anarchy are not the paths to a better future, but I contend that neither is avoiding addressing the current tensions surrounding the issues of racial inequity and expressions of white supremacy. Historian Arthur Schlesinger wrote, "The whole of history is the weapon of democracy." I would say it this way. Truth-telling and transparent history provide this nation the strength and backbone to further its well-being and to preserve the principles of democracy. Future generations will not measure us by how we defend the past, but by how we respond to the critical social issues we face today. I am committed to that solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick.
Ms. Carla Kincaid.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to just give a little bit of information about some of the statues that have been removed. And I know that the county and the city has had kind of a hot potato thing as far as who's concerned was it to move it. And I'd just like to start with Nash County. They had a Confederate monument at Rocky Mount. It was dismantled and placed in storage. The city council of Rocky Mount voted to remove that monument. We also had Pitt County Confederate Soldiers monument in Greenville, removed by the county. County, which owns the statue, voted to remove immediately under reason of threatened public safety. Zebulon Bird Vance monument, Asheville City Council and Buncombe County Council. City and county councils both unanimously passed a joint resolution to remove a monument, which means they in unity. There's some kind of unity in Asheville, and we can see that. It's a very diverse, accepting community in Asheville. Monument to 60th Regiment, NC Volunteers, and Battle of Chickamauga, and that's in Asheville. Removed by Buncombe County Commission, formerly located in front of the county courthouse. Robert E. Lee, Dixie Highway, Colonel John Conley Walker, removed jointly, Buncombe County Commission and City of Asheville. Placed in storage, the base left for future use of the site. I understand that you guys were considering that at one time here. Statue of Henry Lawson Wyatt in Raleigh, removed by the governor's office. Monument to North Carolina Women of the Confederacy, removed by the governor's order. To our Confederate dead monument, Lewisburg. Lewisburg Town Council voted to remove the monument to the Oakwood Cemetery. Warrenton County Confederate Soldiers Monument, Warrenton, removed by the county, placed in storage. County commissioners unanimously voted to remove the statue. I don't have a lot of time. 3 minutes is not a lot of time. I continue to come back because I know that we cannot progress. And African Americans everywhere, as I did a lot of work in Washington, D.C. as well, with D.C. statehood and a lot of other things in that area. And we can't sit down on progress because there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made. It always has been. And if you read and research, there's Indians. The Indians also have removed several statues even before all this. And statues were removed way before Floyd protest became about. Thank you. And Carla Kincaid, live on 126, 1276 Oak Hill Community, best community in Burke County.
Thank you, Ms. Kincaid. Have anyone else to speak tonight? Seeing here none, I'll close the public comments tonight. Thank you all for being here and making these comments. This brings us to item number 9, Mr. Manager, consent agenda. We'll hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, you have 8 items on your consent agenda. First, BOC, designation of voting delegate for the NCACC annual conference. Item 2, clerk, recommendations for reappointment to Hickory Regional Planning Commission. Item 3, finance, acceptance of American Rescue Plan funds. Item 4, finance master plan / space needs assessment contract. Item 5, general services, solid waste division, Labella Associates annual service, physical 21-22. Item 6, partners, joint resolution of the boards of county commissioners of Burke, Catawba, Cleveland, Gaston, Iredell, Lincoln, Rutherford, Surrey, and Yadkin counties, and approval of amended bylaws. Item 7, tax department, tax collection report for June 2021. And the final item, item number 8, tax department release refunds report for June 2021. That concludes your consent agenda, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Gentlemen, you've heard these items as read by our manager. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Thank you, Wayne. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of us, Madam Clerk. We have two items tonight for decision. Item number one comes from our clerk, appointments or reappointments to the Animal Advisory Board. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The terms for the following seats on the Animal Advisory Board end July 31st. Seat number 2, veterinarian, currently occupied by Dr. Linda Schakowsky. Seat number 4, at-large pet owner, occupied by Debbie Hawkins. The commissioners created seats on June 15th for number 6, at-large breeder, and seat number 8, at-large large animal owner. Concerning seat number 2, Dr. Schakowsky did not submit an application for reappointment, so her removal is requested. Seat number 4, you have a choice to reappoint Debbie Hawkins or to appoint Felicia Cobb or Denise Smith to advisory board for seat number 4, at-large pet owner, for a 2-year term ending July 31st, 2023. For seat number 6, there was one application received from Liz Boyd Oliver, who is a breeder. That would be for also a 2-year term ending July 31st, 2023. For seat number 8, one application was received, and that is for the large animal owner. Ms. Robinson is the Director of Animal Assisted Therapy at the Riddle Center. While she works with horses every day through her job, she does not personally own any horses. And if you wish to consider her for this appointment, you may want to consider an exception to the ownership provision of that seat.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Gentlemen, we've got several items. I'm going to just take them one at a time for clarity here. I'll entertain a motion to remove Dr. Schakowsky from the AAB's roster and thank her for her service to our community.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Wayne. Those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. On the seat number 4, we have 3 applicants there. Of course, Debbie Hawkins has been serving on the board, and then we have Felicia Cobb or Denise Smith who have provided application for this seat as well. I'll entertain nominations for this seat.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to reappoint Debbie Hawkins to the seat.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I will nominate Denise Smith for that position.
Thank
I'm
you.
getting comments that that board might be being staffed and maybe we need to change a couple. So we'll just see how the board feels. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, I'll close nominations and we'll vote as the order that they were received. Those in favor of Debbie Hawkins to be reappointed to this board signify by the uplifted hand. Those opposed, or those in favor of Debbie Smith, Denise Smith, I should say. That's 1. So, Madam Clerk, 4 votes for Ms. Hawkins and 1 for Denise Smith. Okay. Also, Madam Clerk, back up.
We need to do the appointment for,
She did.
do we need to appoint Linda McGrady for DMV?
No,
Oh, I'm
she
sorry.
didn't. She didn't get that application. All right. Item for seat number 6, to appoint Liz Oliver to the Animal Advisory Board as a breeder. That's the only application we have had for that seat, right, Madam Clerk? All right. Do I hear a motion to appoint Liz Boyd Oliver to seat number 6?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Gentlemen, you've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk.
All
right, now we'll come to seat number 8. This is the newly created large animal owner seat. Gentlemen, you've seen the application. You'll note that the only application we've had is from Ms. Robinson. She has owned horses according to her application in the past. Right at the moment, she does not. She is the animal assisted therapy director at the Riddle Center. So I would maybe entertain discussion for just a moment. If we want to consider this applicant, we would need to accept the ownership requirement, or would you prefer to wait? I know I have made a few comments or contacts myself without any luck, and I think the clerk has done so also.
I also advertised in the paper as well as on the website and word of mouth, so.
So I think my suggestion is we act on this applicant unless you guys feel otherwise.
Does anybody know her personally? Does anybody know her character?
I do not. All right.
The ruling, excuse me, the ruling is that she must be owner, and we'd have to make that exception for her to hold that position. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. All right, with that information, gentlemen, I'll move that we accept Mrs. Robinson with the exception of ownership exception, given that she has been an owner in the past and is currently working in this capacity. Those in favor of that signify by the uplifted hand.
This doesn't stand forever. I mean, they're not changing rules.
No, sir. No change in the rules, just making.
A warm body wanting to serve is better than
Zero.
somebody who qualifies.
That's 5-0, Madam Clerk. All right, thank you. All right, next item on the decision agenda comes from Community Development, the Remediation Authority request for compliance of condemnation order case file 07219. This will be presented by Steve Holden, Chief Building Inspector, and Bradley Kirkley, our zoning administrator. And just before, gentlemen, JR, would you, and I'm sorry, I was about to ask you to make a comment on some information received today, but that was on a different case. That was on the Cook matter, I believe. So forget that. You gentlemen carry on. Pardon me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The item we bring to you this evening on behalf of both planning as well as building inspections is a property that each of you are aware of. 2372 Ridge Creek Drive. Property owner is a Lee Flynn. Information has been included in your packet as well as some photos. The property in question was a structure, a dwelling that caught fire. It was ordered to be condemned from Mr. Holden. An appeal was filed from Mr. Flynn, which then in turn came before you all as a decision item. The original order from Steve, which gave a deadline date of May 30th, 2021 for the complete demolition and cleanup of the property, was upheld by you folks. Within that, since that time, the order has not been met on behalf of Mr. Flynn. So what staff is requesting of you is the approval and the allowance for staff to seek out and seek for bids for the demolition and cleanup of this nuisance property and issue to achieve compliance with the written order as it was originally stated for the removal of the home. Within the packet and request, we are requesting $25,000. We do know that that's a little larger than what we would normally come to you for. The purpose for that is because the amount of items that exist on the property are not just necessarily contained to the dwelling itself. So in an effort to keep from coming back before you in another public format, we're asking for more money up front. I certainly hope not to spend that amount, but we simply are asking for that so we do not have to come back before you to ask for additional funding. If you have any questions regarding the situation, I'll be happy to entertain them, try to answer those as best I can. If anything is structural related for the property, as far as the order, Steve is here to answer those.
All right, thank you, Bradley. Gentlemen, you've heard this information. Any questions for Steve or Bradley on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make one comment. We have rules and policies, and we were asked to be lenient on this situation. We were lenient. If we're not seeing any improvement, we have no choice but to follow our policies on ordinance. So that would be my recommendation.
All right, thank you, Maynard. Any other comments?
I do want to say that since the order was upheld by the board, Mr. Flynn did do some demolition work there for the site. So there was some activity, some dismantling of the property. However, if you look within the original order, which was voted and agreed upon, the original order states that all circumstances dealing with the structure itself were to be removed. Those have not been met. A center section has been demolished, but the entire home still is standing in its current capacity. I also would like to state that if it be the decision of the board to grant staff the opportunity to pursue forward with this, that it be specifically stated as to what we are seeking to turn and remove. Are we strictly looking at just the home? Is it the confines of the property? Is it the graffitied fence that you see within the photo that's there in front of you? At what extent are we looking at?
All right, thank you, Bradley. And I think I'll just comment there. As far as I'm concerned, it's the extent of the property, the fence, the whole big mess. Unless anybody else has another thought.
You read my mind.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a post question, if I may. Do you feel that the property will bring the $25,000 if it costs that to clean it up? I mean, will the county get their money back at some point on this venture?
Yeah, it's quickly going to glance to see what the actual property value is. I can tell you that there are outstanding taxes that exist for the site. Nothing has been filed as far as foreclosure proceedings to that. Once again, my goal is to be well below that $25,000. The last one of these items that we came to you for, we asked for $15,000. I ended up getting it done for $7,500. I'm asking for something similar in that capacity. To be completely forthright, I'm going to seek out that same company to see if they're still interested in that, because that was certainly a low bid that we got with that. Once again, this, and speaking on behalf of staff, I don't know the extent of what's on the other side of that fence. I do feel that there will be a larger amount of solid debris items, dismantling debris there in the back. So I think it will be more than just the regular confines of a 1,500 square foot house. But once again, I'm hoping to stay well below that $25,000.
Okay, gentlemen, we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Let's get a motion.
Give us a motion, somebody.
Mr. Chairman, I move to uphold the condemnation ruling for the abandoned damaged dwelling and authorize up to $25,000 of fund balance from the general fund for Burke County Code Enforcement to remove the violations and nuisances from the property located at 2372 Ridge Creek Drive, PIN number 17826341121. Further authorize the county manager to execute the demolition contract on behalf of the board, subject to review and/or revision by the county attorney. Any direct cost via cleanup, demolition, or removal will be placed within a property lien by the county attorney and recorded within the Register of Deeds office.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by the uplifting hand. Madam Clerk, that's 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, sir.
Item 11 tonight, reports and comments. And with that, I'll start to my right. Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I left my notes at home, so this will be sort of freestyle. Oh, come on now. Today in Burke County Superior Court, the county was granted a judgment against Mr. Cook and his wife in the lawsuit that we filed back in October concerning violations of the county zoning ordinance and the county environmental ordinance in the salvage yard that the Cooks operate off of Iron Circle and Iron Lane. The attorney for Ronnie Franklin, whom we also sued because there were a lot of these vehicles on his property, also received judgment against Mr. Cook. And the terms of the judgment that parties have granted is that Mr. Cook has 30 days to finish getting everything off of the Franklin property and his other properties and the materials that line the road there at Iron Circle and Iron Lane, and getting them behind the fence, which he has now completed, that surrounds his salvage yard. He's got 30 days to complete that. He is subject, or is the subject now, of a permanent injunction that keeps Mr. and Ms. Cook from violating the county ordinances in the operation of their salvage yard, whether it's our zoning ordinance or whether it's our environmental ordinance. And it can be enforced by a motion for contempt rather than having to sue him and her again. So the county got everything that we were asking for, and I have been charged with preparing the order along with Mr. Franklin's attorney, Richard Byer, and we will have that and have it to the judge this week. In other matters, we have closed on the Foothill Conservancy gift of the 17.03 acre tract in Jonas Ridge to the county. That closed on June the 30th. We were able to look at the restrictions, the final restrictions that only became final the day before, and Shane Prisby and I both thought it was to the county's advantage to go forward, so we accepted the gift, and we are now the proud owners of the Jonas Ridge Cranberry Bog property. Also, I've completed a contract between the county and Eichard Water Corporation for joint billing. I have reviewed and approved 12 of our annual grant contracts with our grant recipients, and I'm currently working on an agreement with our veterans group that has created the Killed in Action Monument to establish issues of ownership and maintenance for the monument. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, J.R. Wayne?
No comment.
Maynard?
I believe our attorney worked overtime, didn't you? Bring you some good news. All of you knew I missed our pre-agenda meeting because of my family from all over the United States was having their super every third year reunion. And I just jotted some numbers while our attorney was speaking. 4 generations deep, we're 262 family members strong. We had in Burke County 172 of them, and I just multiplied that number by 400. It'd be closer to 1,000, I'm sure, that everybody spent while they were here. But with 400, it's $58,800. So you can smile, you made some money in taxes and occupancy taxes this last couple of weeks. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
No comments, sir. Thank you.
I have to say, Commissioner Taylor, that was a good lead-in, because occupancy tax, I was looking at the reports this morning, we had a TDA meeting. If you read the News Herald this morning, great article about how our motels are booming, people are coming in, setting records monthly, and so thanks for the help on that, because the numbers don't lie. They've really exploded in the last few months, and so and we expect that trend to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to remind everybody that the NCACC convention will be in the great state of Wilmington. So please remember, and your rooms and everything have already been assigned. Mr. Frank Williams from Brunswick County will be sworn in as the next president of the association. So please make sure you attend. Please keep up with some of the bills that are moving through the General Assembly. On a personal note, I am strongly opposed to one bill that is moving very quickly. It's got a funny name to it, but it is legalization of marijuana for medical purposes. Very, very lengthy bill with a lot of language in it. So if you decide you want to call your legislator about that, that moved out of the Senate and it's in the House at the present time. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carswell. Madam Clerk. Okay, I thought I was dead there for just a moment, but I'm back. It seems to be okay now. Let me remind you to see our animal shelter if you have need for pets. We got lots of cats and dogs that would love a nice new home. Consider adopting a pet at our animal services offices. I ask you to not litter and pick up litter if you can in our county. And remind all of us who tote trash to the various convenience centers and to our landfill to please secure your trash and be sure that it's covered if it's loose so that it cannot blow out and litter our highways and roadways. And also let me encourage you, if you are still unvaccinated from the COVID-19 virus, to please consider getting a vaccine to help us curb the ongoing cases of COVID that we're seeing in our county as well as throughout our state and our nation. Would encourage all of us that are eligible and able to consider receiving that vaccine so that we can mitigate this problem. All right, I don't have any other reports tonight, so I'll ask Madam Clerk for vacancy announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have the following opportunities for citizens to be engaged in county boards and committees: the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, the Animal Advisory Board, Council on Aging, Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, City of Morganton Board of Adjustment and Planning Board for the ETJ, Burke Senior Center Advisory Council, the Recreation Commission, Child Protection and Child Fatality Prevention Team, the East Burke Senior Center Advisory Board, and the Board of Health.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And again, I would encourage any of our citizens who can help us on these boards and commissions to please consider doing so. And you can contact our clerk for applications for any of those. Gentlemen, tonight we do have need for a closed session to go into closed session to discuss threatened or pending litigation, to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to discuss economic development matters, to discuss contractual matters, land acquisition, and to discuss personnel matters as authorized by NCGS 143.318.11A3, 4, 5, and 6. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye. Aye. That's all of us. Madam Clerk? We'll take about well, we're on pretty good time. Let's just go right on into closed session. How about that? Everybody okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. right, gentlemen, with the proper motion to come out of closed session, we're back in open session at this time. We had no matters to report in open session, and with that, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Taylor, and those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That's all of us, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much.